So there was big confusion earlier this week about whether or not pupils will be required to wear face masks in classrooms. That came as the government released the new health regulations on Wednesday night, saying that pupils would no longer be required to mask up in the classroom. The Department of Health later clarified that that was a case of human error and therefore face masks are still required. But some parents are concerned that wearing the masks could lead to long-term developmental issues. Let's talk about this then with Professor Mignon McCulloch, President of the South African Paediatric Association. Prof, always good to have you on Newzroom Afrika. First things first, I'll get to the developmental issues, but let's talk about why there's such uproar about children wearing face masks to begin with in general.
Thank you very much for having me on your show again, and I think we really need to have a flexible approach. I think the uproar is because everybody is pretty fed up with COVID. We thought it was going to only be with us for a year, and it's dragged on 2-3 years, and the chances are it will probably be with us for a long time still to come. I think we need to think about weighing up the pros and cons and look at the harms versus the benefits. So for the older adolescents or young adults, they are going to behave more like adults, and so it's probably not unreasonable to expect them to wear a mask, especially as we're going into winter. We know a lot of the classrooms are overcrowded. Windows will be closed. It's not like the summer where we can actually open and have good ventilation. And we also know that we are actually about to enter a fifth wave. So I think for the older children and adolescents, I think it's less of an uproar. The WHO and UNICEF have had lots of debates about this recently. Professor Heather Zar, one of my colleagues, has been our representative on this committee. We know the kids under 6 years of age, we are not required to wear face masks. We know it's very difficult for them to wear face masks properly. The group that I think is open for debate at the moment are the sort of 6 to 12-year-olds. They have not been vaccinated. South Africa has not yet vaccinated this group compared to other countries like the USA and Europe. But we know that some of these children may have some difficulties wearing masks. So if you've got hearing impairments or speech problems, then wearing a mask may not be to your benefit. But on the whole, we know that masks are not bad for children if you've got a normal child. In fact, if you have a child who's got health problems, wearing a mask if they've not been vaccinated may in fact benefit them. So children who are immunocompromised, transplants, oncology children, those kids would actually benefit going into a fifth wave with poor ventilation and overcrowded conditions in actually wearing masks. So I think that's what the uproar is all about. We have seen that kids tend to be copycats. So if their parents wear their masks, and lots of South Africans are amazing, they've really worn their masks very sensibly, and then children want to do what their parents and their adult carers are doing. And so many children have actually worn their masks quite sensibly, but obviously the little guys, it's difficult for them to do that. And so what we're saying is don't get into a big panic. Remain calm, look at the pros and the cons. If we're going into winter, it's cold inside, and if your windows are closed, it's raining outside. To be dropping your masks when you're about to enter a fifth wave is probably not the wisest thing to do. If it's sunny outside and the kids can run around outside without wearing their masks, then that's really great. Okay. So that's where we're at the moment.
So what about the argument then that in some cases, it's not so much so that the kids themselves are wearing masks, but because a lot of them learn by mimicking, especially in the classroom setup, it becomes a complication if the teacher is still wearing a mask.
Yeah, so I hear that. Most children who are undergoing normal education, who don't have disabilities, have actually managed quite well. If the teacher speaks clearly and if there's good distancing, then that would be okay. But we know that a lot of our children in the poorer areas have got very overcrowded conditions. They're not able to maintain the 1 meter distancing, often 40, 50, even 60 kids in a classroom together, specifically the older teenagers. Those are the ones that we are saying should be doing what the adults are doing and wearing your masks.
Just
the little guys. Yeah.
Please finish your point, Prof. Apologies.
Now, I was just going to say, the little guys, it's a little bit more controversial. And we know kids under 6, in this country, we said kids under 6 don't need to wear a mask. In the USA, they said kids from the age of 2 needed to wear a mask. We don't go for that. So I think the controversial age group are those 6 to 11-year-olds who are actually, in fact, not vaccinated. So, and we know that our vaccination rate is not as high as in the other countries. We know we've had lots of infections. But we're just trying to be sensible and just trying to protect children, not just from COVID, but from RSV, adeno, and all those other respiratory viruses that we are seeing in enormous numbers in our hospitals as winter progresses. So if you ask most pediatricians at the moment, it's not COVID that's affecting the kids, it's the other winter viruses, and possibly wearing masks would protect against those as well.
To what extent does the previous scientific advice around children and how much risk they face from COVID-19 infection as far as serious illness and admission to hospital, how much does that stand? Are we still at a point where they are the least likely to be incredibly ill?
You're absolutely spot on. They are least likely to get ill, but we do know that many of them go home to homes where there may be a vulnerable adult, a grandparent, an aunt and uncle, a parent who may have other comorbidities. So it really is a balance of pros and cons, of harm versus benefit. And I think that's where everybody is struggling. And as I started off, I think everyone's just really fed up with this virus, and that's why we can understand why tempers are flaring. And I think we need to look at each individual situation, each classroom, each individual learner, and see what works for everybody in general. But we are entering winter. We are expecting another wave. Hopefully it'll be Omicron variants again, which affects children less than adults. But we do know that the B4 and the B5 variants look now like they are even more contagious than before. And that's where we're struggling at the moment. A crystal ball would be wonderful, but as we know, with COVID, there's always a twist or a turn that we may not be aware of.
So we've spoken about the physical health. I wonder if you've had any observations around the mental and emotional toll of the pandemic period on children, and whether that may in fact turn out to be the most difficult thing to heal.
Absolutely. And what we are seeing is that children for a long time did not go back to school. They often had problems where their parents or their carers were not able to go to work. And so we've seen lots of problems with malnutrition. We've seen problems with physical and sexual abuse. So we've always from the beginning said, please, let's get our young children and our adolescents back to school. School is where they can see their friends. They can not have the sort of mental stress that comes with not seeing your friends and being worried if they're going to be okay. So we still maintain, even though we're going into winter, we've got another wave coming. Please keep our kids at school. We really need to make sure that they get educated. And school is often about nutrition. So lots of schools provide food, soup kitchens, provide sandwiches for kids, but also the mental stimulation and often protects them from physical but also from sexual harm. So, we know COVID has wreaked havoc. It's wreaked havoc with mental health with every single age group. But keeping kids at school, getting them well nourished, keeping them safe and getting them educated really is what we are all about.